The time has finally come for me to talk about my favorite female character within the entirety of Bleach. Of course, I'm talking about Yoruichi Shihoin. In this video, I'm going to be covering everything that we need to know about her character, breaking down her various different appearances within the story, the relationships that she shares with several characters like Urahara or Soi Fon, as well as going over her past so that we can understand her current appearances within the story. Yoruichi is one of those characters who undeniably is there for the fan service, but this doesn't mean that she lacks characterization or isn't an interesting character to follow. Hopefully after watching this video you'll better understand the character. So without any further delay, let's get into the Yoruichi character analysis. Yoruichi makes her debut appearance within chapter 51 of the manga and in episode 15 of the anime. You'll notice that she has purple hair that goes down to her waist, as well as her eye-catching golden irises. Of course, this wasn't the appearance that we were introduced to her character as. She had initially appeared during the first arc of the story as a cat. We were under the impression that Yoruichi was a male character because of the male voice that came out of the cat, and her true identity isn't revealed to us until chapter 116. I think all of us were left jaw-dropped after this sudden reveal, but I'll talk more about that as the video continues. Yoruichi is very intelligent and kind-hearted when it comes to her subordinates. She has a lot of knowledge when it comes to the inner workings of the Soul Society. This is because she was the former leader of the Soul Society's stealth division, the Onmitsukido, and she was also the former captain of the 2nd division of the Gotei 13. Yoruichi was born into one of the 4 great noble families of the Soul Society, the Shihoin Clan, and very much like Kind Shiba, she has a very laid-back, relaxed personality, not taking her position as a noble too seriously. During her time as a captain of the Gotei 13, she had insisted on her subordinates not referring to her as Yoruichi-sama. She didn't like the honorifics and just wanted to drop all of the formalities. There is a lot that we don't know about Yoruichi's character. One of the key things that was never revealed to us about Yoruichi was her Zanpakuto. It has been revealed that she does have a Bankai of her own, but we don't see her wearing her Zanpakuto unless it's within a flashback during her time within the Soul Society. We know that Yoruichi prefers hand-to-hand combat, and we know that within the second Can't Feel Your Own World novel it is revealed that Yoruichi does indeed have a proper Zanpakuto. Despite the fact that it is very strong, its Zanpakuto prefers hand-to-hand combat, so Yoruichi relying on Hakuda and Kido suits not only her own fighting style, but it suits her Zanpakuto spirit also. Yoruichi often teases and has a lot of playful banter with the people who are younger than her. We see this with her relationship with Ichigo, and we especially see this during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, as we see her teasing Byakuya Kuchiki and being quite laid back and playful with Soi Fon. Yoruichi is loyal to the cast of characters within the story, and her loyalty especially lies to her 2 childhood friends Urahara and Tessai. And this personality trait of Yoruichi is in striking contrast to the stereotypical view of cats, which are that they only care about themselves. Yoruichi does have a lot of cat-like characteristics within her personality, most notably her tendencies to be very witty and playful. This is a character trait which is often associated with cats, and it's not only within her personality that she demonstrates these feline characteristics. Even her powers that she demonstrates throughout the story have a cat-like feel to them, most notably her incredible speed and her reflexes, which are akin to cat-like reflexes. Despite her appearing quite often within the story, Yoruichi is very mysterious, well at least to me, and I think this further adds to this whole cat aesthetic that Kubo was trying to go for. There were a lot of people who were put off with the decisions that Kubo made with the character during the 1000-Year Blood War arc, in particular regarding the transformation that she undergoes into the Thunder Cat form. People deemed it to be a very unnecessarily erotic form. There's nothing wrong with fan service, but when it's excessive like this, I think people don't take to it very well. Transformations are usually high points for characters, but this Thunder Cat form is usually regarded as one of Yoruichi's most lowest moments within the story. But I'll talk more about this when I cover her character's appearances within the final arc of the story. For now, let's go all the way back in time and discuss Yoruichi's past. Let's try to understand how she had found herself living with Urahara and Tessai, and why she is no longer the head of the Onmitsukido or the captain of the 2nd division. In chapter 159, we learn that Yoruichi was born as a princess of the Shihoin family. By tradition, the head of the Shihoin family leads the Onmitsukido. This very group are the caretakers of the treasured tools and the armaments of the Soul Society that have been bestowed to them by gods. Within the Bleach databook, we learn that the head of the Shihoin family is is tasked to protect the Imperial Soldier garments. They are a powerful spiritual tool that is said to have been handed down from the heavens. So you can see that Yoruichi was born into a family with a lot of responsibility, and everything comes full circle for her when she eventually becomes the first female leader of the Shihoin family. We know that during her childhood, Yoruichi was raised within the Shihoin mansion, which resides within the Serite. Very little is known about her childhood, but through the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, we learned that she had spent it playing with Urahara and Tessai. During their childhood, they had spent their time playing games under the Sokyoku Hill training space. This is an area that Urahara had built while they were just children. It wasn't long before Yoruichi had become the leader of the Shihoin family, and as a result of that, she had become the head of the Onmitsukido. She was the 22nd generation head of the Shihoin family, becoming the first ever woman to hold this position. As Yoruichi continued to excel, she eventually attained the position of a captain of the Gotei 13. Leading the 2nd division, she had eventually united it along with the Onmitsukido. While she was the commander of the Onmitsukido, she had taken in Soi Fon as her own personal bodyguard, and this is where Soi Fon had developed a close bond with Yoruichi, someone who she had admired since she was just a child. She saw a lot of potential within Soi Fon, and through seeing her untapped potential, Yoruichi became a mentor to her. She had ended up teaching her various different techniques, which explains why Soi Fon fights in a similar manner to Yoruichi. While she was in the Soul Society, Yoruichi had created and crafted many techniques, the most significant of which is Shumpo. This defensive technique allows an individual to move with a lot of speed and agility, resulting in them moving faster than the eye can follow. The whole point of Shumpo or Flash Step is how fast an individual can go from one point to another by using the least amount of steps. Yoruichi is dubbed by the title of Flash Goddess. This is because she is the fastest Shumpo user within the entirety of the Soul Society. Yoruichi had also taught some of her techniques to Byakuya, which explains some of the impressive feats of speed and agility that Byakuya demonstrates within the story. During the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, we learned that it was thanks to Yoruichi that Kisuke Urahara was considered for the position as the captain of the 12th Division. He had eventually been assigned as the captain and went on to create the Soul Society's Research and Development Institute. During this flashback arc, you will notice this frank and laid-back nature of Yoruichi. Despite her nobility and her holding so many positions and rankings within the Soul Society, she doesn't let any of this get to her head. She treats those who are below her as her equals, and doesn't pass judgment down on others, something that we see contrasted to against Soi Fon, who we see has a issue with Yoruichi recommending Urahara to be a captain, as she believes him to be undeserving of such a position. Soi Fon had even gone to such lengths as following Urahara for an entire day, trying to prove that he is lazy and unworthy of the captain's rank. When she is presented with Soi Fon's findings, Yoruichi just laughs them off, and you can clearly see that she doesn't take things too seriously. This aspect of her personality is excellently juxtaposed with Soi Fon's uptight nature. You can see that Yoruichi and Urahara have an incredibly close relationship. When she is informed that Urahara has entered the detention facility that is overseen by the Onmitsukido, and he had stated that Yoruichi had given him approval to go in there, she states that she doesn't remember if Urahara had indeed asked her. When an Onmitsukido member asks if they should remove Urahara, she casually tells them not to bother, and to allow him to do as he pleases. All of this distresses Soi Fon, but Yoruichi tells her to calm down. She trusts Urahara and knows that he wouldn't do anything to break her trust, and as we know, everything was fine in the end, as Urahara had gone into the detention facility in order to recruit Mayuri into his division. As a member of the Shihoin family, Yoruichi was on good terms with the Kuchiki family. She had regularly visited the Kuchiki mansion to play tag with a teenage Byakuya Kuchiki. The at the time head of the Kuchiki family, Ginrei Kuchiki, had requested for Yoruichi to train Byakuya. Yoruichi teases a young Byakuya by stealing his hair ribbon, and this one moment is an excellent callback to their encounter during the Soul Society arc, which had foreshadowed that these two individuals had known each other in the past. When Byakuya chases Yoruichi to get his hair ribbon back, he utilizes Shumpo, which proves that Yoruichi had indeed been teaching Byakuya. 9 years after Urahara had become the captain of the 12th Division, Yoruichi is present at an emergency captain's meeting, where she is made aware of the disappearance of the 9th Division captain Kensei, along with several other Shinigami. When Urahara arrives at the captain's meeting late, he pleads with the head captain to allow him to go with the investigation team to see what on earth has happened with Kensei and the others. This is because Urahara had previously sent his lieutenant Hiyori to the site where the disappearances had occurred. The head captain refuses his request, to which Urahara begins to protest, and it is here where Yoruichi out of character scolds Urahara. She describes his behavior as being pathetic, and that he should get a grip of himself, because after all, he himself had sent Hiyori there. He shouldn't lose his composure and insult her efforts. He needs to have faith in her. We next see Yoruichi the following day when Urahara and Tessai are arrested and brought forward to the Central 46. They were set up by Aizen, but they plead for their innocence. They were given their sentences for committing crimes against the Soul Society, but before their sentences can be executed, a concealed Yoruichi breaks into the building. She rescues her childhood friends and takes them to the secret underground training area where they had played together as children. She expresses that she is angry at both of them for excluding her from their plans. She also tells them that she has brought the 8 holified Shinigami to them, and the prototype Gigai that Urahara was working on. In this moment, she demonstrates her loyalty to her friends. She leaves the Soul Society to go to the world of the living along with Tessai and Urahara, relinquishing her titles as the princess and head of the Shihoin Clan, the captain of the 2nd Division, and the leader of the Onmitsukido. She gave all of this up in order to help her friends Urahara and Tessai. This concludes everything that we know about Yoruichi's past, and now takes us to her first appearance within the story. In chapter 51, Yoruichi is revealed within a cat form. Tessai reveals to Jinta that she is Urahara's best friend. After Rukia is taken back to the Soul Society and Ichigo begins his training with Urahara, Yoruichi ends up offering to train both Orihime and Chad. Yoruichi accompanies them to try and convince Uryu to train with them, but he refuses to in chapter 61. Thanks to the help of Yoruichi, both Chad and Orihime are able to call upon their powers at will. She ends up returning to the Soul Society when she accompanies Ichigo, Uryu, Chad and Orihime as they begin their mission to rescue Rukia. She acts as their guide through the Soul Society, as she first guides them through their journey in the Bankai, warning them of the dangers that lie ahead of them, and whether if Ichigo is resolute in his resolve to rescue Rukia. Knowing everything that we know about Yoruichi is interesting following her reactions to the characters encountering captains or various other individuals from the Soul Society. When Ichigo encounters Genichimaru at the gates of the Serete, she is shocked that Ichigo is willing to fight against a captain, as she knows full well that he is no match for one. When their plans to enter into the Serete are thwarted by Genichimaru, Yoruichi resorts to asking for help from Kukakushiba. In chapter 78, you can see that Kukakushiba and Yoruichi have a understanding with each other, as Yoruichi explains their situation to her, to which she agrees to help them. After using her fireworks cannons to break into the Serete, the group end up splitting up. Yoruichi is hurled away from the group, and we don't really see her again until chapter 115. She is running around in a cat form, as she is keeping a close eye on how Ichigo and the others are progressing, and she makes an appearance when she rescues Ichigo from his battle against Kinpachi. She takes Ichigo to an underground area where he is resting. In chapter 116, after rescuing Ichigo, she reveals her true form to him, and she explains how she had carried him here from his battle against Kinpachi. She hands him over a tool that if Ichigo releases his spiritual pressure into, it will allow him to fly. It's a rare and valuable artifact, even for the likes of the Soul Society. When Ichigo expresses his surprise with Yoruichi and questions who on earth she is, they are interrupted by Byakuya's release of his spiritual pressure. Ichigo is worried for Ganju and Hanataro, as he has deduced that they have been confronted by Byakuya. Using the device that Yoruichi had just handed him, he rushes to their location. When Byakuya is about to kill Ichigo in chapter 117, Yoruichi arrives. She wraps a bandage around Byakuya's zanpakuto as if to stop him. Ukitake and Byakuya immediately recognize her, as they refer to her by her name. Her identity is revealed as the former head of the Onmitsukido, as Byakuya tells her that it's been a long time, as he hasn't seen her for over a century. Ichigo tells Yoruichi to stay out of it because he has to beat Byakuya, to which Yoruichi calls him a fool and impales him through his abdomen. Ukitake notes that through impaling Ichigo, she had administered a powerful anesthetic right into his organs. Yoruichi demonstrates her incredible agility as she escapes from Byakuya. At one moment, it did appear as though Byakuya had striked Yoruichi, but she was successful in evading him. In the end, she tells Byakuya that she will make Ichigo stronger than him within 3 days. This is an excellent interaction between former student and master, as the two of them engage in a battle of Shumpo, but Yoruichi proves that she is still better than him at using this ability that she had invented. Later, in chapter 120, while Ichigo is recovering, she explains to him why he was the only person that she had brought back. She says that she was only able to outrun Byakuya because she was carrying one person. If she was handicapped by carrying more than one, despite his reckless act of abruptly leaving her and going to Byakuya, she rescued him because she believes that he has a chance to defeat Byakuya. She ends up reassuring Ichigo that as long as Ukitake is there, he will not let Byakuya hurt Hanataro or Ganju. Within this same chapter, it is Yoruichi who explains to Ichigo and to us that a zanpakuto has 2 releases. The first one is called Shikai, and the second is called Bankai. To become a captain of the Gotei 13, it is necessary that an individual has achieved both zanpakuto releases. She goes on to tell Ichigo that every captain within the Gotei 13, apart from Kinpachi Zaraki, can release Bankai. She explains that the shape and form that a Shikai or Bankai takes are dependent upon the zanpakuto and its user, but generally speaking, speaking, after learning Bankai, an individual's power grows 5 to 10 times larger. It usually takes 10 years of training in order to master Bankai, but Yoruichi is going to make Ichigo attain it within 3 days. So from chapter 127, Ichigo's Bankai training begins. She brings forth Ichigo's Zanpakuto spirit, Zangetsu, in order to help him to achieve Bankai. Yoruichi involves herself in the training by making sure that Ichigo's Zanpakuto spirit remains materialized through this large white doll that she is using. After their first day of training is over, Yoruichi reveals to Ichigo that the area that they are training in originally used to be hers and Urahara's playground. They'd built it deep underground, under the Sokyoku. In chapter 130, we get a panel which reveals that Urahara and Yoruichi used to train in this area when they had both joined the Gote 13. Ichigo finally learns that the two of them used to be Shinigami. Yoruichi goes on to reveal to Ichigo that Urahara used to be the previous captain of the 12th Division, and he was the first founder of the Soul Society's Research and Development Institute. All of this foreshadows all of the events that occur within the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, and as I've already discussed, we get a full history of Urahara and Yoruichi's time within the Gote 13 during that flashback. Throughout Ichigo's training, Yoruichi remains confident that he will learn Bankai, even after she learns from Renji that Rukia's execution has been moved up. After Ichigo's training is completed, she allows Ichigo to borrow that device again, which will allow him to fly, so that he can make it in time to rescue Rukia. In chapter 153, after the Sokyoku is destroyed, Yoruichi once again appears, as she protects Kyone from being attacked by Soi Fon. Using Shunpo, Yoruichi takes Soi Fon to an area where they can engage in battle openly. They land in a forest and begin hand-to-hand combat immediately. Soi Fon taunts Yoruichi that it appears that she has lost her touch, and she comments on how far the Shihoin family has fallen now that Yoruichi is helping intruders of the Soul Society. Yoruichi retorts by saying that she is rather talkative today. Is she just excited to see her, or is this pent-up resentment? She asks if following in her footsteps is too much for Soi Fon to handle. Soi Fon goes on to declare that she will execute Yoruichi, since she had abandoned her position, and now she has nowhere left to run. Yoruichi proves herself by taking out Soi Fon's reinforcements, and tells her that she may have abandoned all of her positions, but she hasn't abandoned her nickname, which is Yoruichi the Flash Master. Their battle then takes place between chapters 157 to 159. It initially appears that Soi Fon has the upper hand, but this is just Yoruichi who was giving her a false sense of security, as Soi Fon goes on to reveal a new technique which combines her Kido and Hakuda. She goes on to say that she has never used it in battle before and she has only recently invented it, but Yoruichi interrupts her and tells her that this ability does have a name. It's called Shunko. She ends up using this same technique but a more advanced version of it than Soi Fon had been. She explains the mechanics behind the technique in detail. She unleashes the ability and sends a wave of condensed Reiatsu towards Soi Fon. As their battle draws to a conclusion, Soi Fon becomes frustrated that she wasn't able to surpass Yoruichi even after 100 years of training. When she continues to attack Yoruichi, she effortlessly evades her attacks. By the end of their battle, we see Soi Fon break down completely and start to cry, as we see a fragile, vulnerable side to her character, as she asks her former captain and master why she didn't take her with her. Towards the end of the Soul Society arc, Yoruichi and Soi Fon are among the first to arrive at Sokyoku Hill in order to stop Aizen. It is Yoruichi who stops Aizen from releasing his Zanpakuto. Aizen isn't apprehended for long. When a group of Gillians appear and they use their Nagashon to aid Aizen, it results in him escaping from the Soul Society. When Ichigo and the others end up leaving the Soul Society in chapter 182, we once again see Yoruichi guiding them. We next see Yoruichi in chapter 194. After the Espadas, Ukiura and Yami arrive, Yoruichi and Urahara assist Ichigo in his battle against Yami, as she easily takes care of Yami. Working together, both Urahara and Yoruichi are able to protect Orihime and Ichigo, while fending off the threat of the two Espada. In chapter 195, we see that Yoruichi is healing both her injured left arm and leg after being attacked by Yami. She admits that she should have used a Shunko, and that she didn't expect the skin of the Arrancars to be so tough. She goes on to state that the future battle against Aizen and his army is going to be tougher than they had anticipated. We then don't really see Yoruichi at all until chapter 403, during the Fake Karakura Town arc, when she assists Urahara and Isshin in their battle against Aizen. When the two of them manage to limit Aizen's movements, Yoruichi appears. She's wearing armor both on her arms and legs. As she surprise attacks Aizen from above, she manages to attack into his back and continues to unleash a barrage of attacks, but it proves to be ineffective against Aizen. As he quickly counterattacks, Yoruichi is unable to avoid the full extent of the attack, as the armor on her left leg is completely destroyed. Urahara tells Yoruichi to prepare for the next attack, to which she says that she'll be fine as long as she doesn't use the leg that's currently exposed without armor. But Aizen demonstrates his incredible agility by initiating a counterattack, taking Yoruichi Yoruichi by surprise. In chapter 405, we see that she is able to defend herself, but it takes a lot out of her. Together with Urahara and Isshin, they try their best to battle against Aizen, but Aizen proves to be too formidable. That is until Yoruichi activates her signature ability Shunko, and this indeed cracks Aizen's outer skin. Ultimately, Aizen is unaffected, and in chapter 406, Aizen defeats the trio of Yoruichi, Isshin, and Urahara, and this is the last that we see of Yoruichi within the Fake Karakura Town arc. And when it comes to her involvement within the Fullbringer arc, she doesn't really involve herself, aside from being one of the individuals that Ichigo senses that has given their Ryatsu to restore his own. And we see him mention that Yoruichi's Ryatsu is present in chapter 461. This now takes us to Yoruichi's involvement within the final arc of Bleach, the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Yoruichi makes an appearance in chapter 589 during the second invasion of the Quincy. In chapter 598, we see that Yoruichi accompanies Ichigo, Orihime, Chad, and Ganju as they rush towards the Soul King's palace. They end up confronting Yhwach in chapter 613, and we know that she is present when Yhwach manipulates Ichigo into destroying the Soul King. When Ukitake unleashes Mimihagi in order to stabilize the Soul King, Yoruichi acts quickly by creating a barrier around the Soul King, but she is caught off guard by Uryu, who attacks her shoulder. This results in the barrier that she created being shattered, which results in the Soul King flying towards Yhwach's direction. Yhwach catches the Soul King, but Yoruichi begins throwing spheres at him. She attempts to injure him, but then she is attacked by the Sternritter Pranida, who ends up putting a stop to Yoruichi by warping and twisting her arm. She then has her arm healed by Orihime as they all work together to launch a counterattack against the Quincy. When they end up returning to the Soul King's palace, they realize that Yhwach has reshaped everything and has turned it into its own Wandenreich city. In chapter 628, we get the revelation that Yoruichi has a younger brother. He is called Yushiro Shihoin. We learn that after Yoruichi had abandoned her post as the head, her younger brother had become the head of the Shihoin family. In chapter 656, after the Sternritter Askin takes out Orihime, Chad, and Ichigo, Yoruichi arrives in order to assist them. She activates her Shunko as the battle between the two of them immediately begins. She apologizes to the Sternritter and tells him that he's gonna have to let them get through because they are in a rush. As she activates her Shunko Raijin Senke, she has literally transformed into a god of thunder form, with lightning emanating from the strands of her hair. She manages to attack the Espada and rescue Orihime, as she advises her to heal herself and then Ichigo and Chad, so that they can continue moving forward. Yoruichi stays back to battle against the Sternritter, and she is accompanied by her brother in chapter 657. Her brother seems really enthusiastic and just wants to help his older sister, but from Yoruichi's reactions, it appears that she finds him annoying. We quickly learn that Askin had survived Yoruichi's attack. When Askin insults Yoruichi's Raijin Senke ability, as he punches Askin in the face, appearing to have injured him. As the 23rd head of the Shihoin family, he proves himself by activating his own Shunko ability, called Bakuen Muso, which translates into unrivaled explosive flame. It appears that he had learnt how to use Shunko immediately after seeing Yoruichi use it. Reluctantly, this leads to Yoruichi complimenting him. But even after being attacked by Yoruichi's Shunko and Yushiro's Shunko, it appears that Askin has survived both attacks. Askin reveals that he can control the fatal dose of a substance through ingesting large amounts of it. So in this instance, Askin has taken advantage of both Yushiro and Yoruichi's attacks. He absorbs enough spiritual pressure from each of them that would result in him being killed. And because of this, he states he has the upper hand and the two of them can no longer kill him. In chapter 658, Yoruichi is attacked by a gift ball, which contains reishi, oxygen, and nitrogen. This results in her becoming weakened and unable to stand up. The situation looks hopeless for Yoruichi, as she sees that her brother is unconscious on the ground. But then suddenly Urahara arrives and ends up injecting her backside with an immunity strengthening drug. The drug quickly takes effect and Yoruichi leaps into the air. She ends up activating her God of Thunder form, but Urahara advises her to take on another form, but she states that she doesn't want to use that form again. Yoruichi ends up being punched in the stomach by Askin, and she ends up falling to the ground. Urahara then devises a way of forcing Yoruichi to take on this form that she doesn't want to. He does this by showing her a piece of paper, which seems to have a hypnotic command on it. He has written on this paper that when he flips this page, she'll be transformed. And sure enough, after Urahara flips this piece of paper, Yoruichi transforms at the end of chapter 662. And this is the Thundercat form that I spoke about right at the beginning of the video. The same one that a lot of people had an issue with, in particular because of its unnecessarily erotic and lewd nature. We understand that in this form, Yoruichi is unable to understand what people are saying to her. Her abilities end up becoming enhanced as she attacks Askin, sending him flying. He is confused as to how her spiritual pressure can hurt him. After all, he had already absorbed enough of her spiritual pressure in order to negate any of its effects. In this form, Yoruichi is behaving like a cat, as Urahara states that like a typical cat she is moody and incredibly fickle, and in this form her spiritual pressure is also constantly changing. Her spiritual pressure is directly affected by the mood that Yoruichi is in. Urahara reveals that at present Yoruichi's spiritual pressure is changing 48 times per second, so it is impossible for Askin to develop immunity against it. She ends up engulfing the large Sternritter with a huge lightning bolt, and this ends Yoruichi's involvement within the 1000-year Blood War arc and within this battle, because the immuno-enhancer that Urahara had injected Yoruichi with only lasted for 5 minutes. Now that it has expired, Yoruichi is back to feeling the effects of Askin's gift ball. Of course, Urahara continues fighting Askin, but after the 1000-year Blood War arc is over, we don't really get to know what happens to Yoruichi and Urahara, and this of course is because of the rushed ending of this arc. So unfortunately, despite Yoruichi appearing within the 1000-year Blood War arc surprisingly quite a lot, this is the last time that we see her within the entire story. I found it incredibly creative when Urahara had explained that cats are extremely fickle, and it is for this reason that Yoruichi's Reiatsu has become extremely fickle also. It keeps consistent with this theme of Yoruichi being a cat, not only with her design but in terms of her personality trait and her own powers. I think it's an interesting way that Kubo had devised for Yoruichi to overcome the immunity that Askin had developed to her Reiatsu. Although I might not completely agree with the design that Kubo went for with this form, I do really like the reasoning behind how Yoruichi was able to overcome Askin. Now, to wrap up my thoughts on Yoruichi's character, after going over all of her history and breaking down all of her appearances, she is still hands down my favourite female character to feature within Bleach. Not only is she incredibly beautiful, but she has a fascinating personality, and she has some moments within the story that really made me laugh out loud. Yoruichi's character is also closely linked to Soi Fon and Urahara. I've made videos on each of these characters, so if you want to know more about Yoruichi, then definitely check out those two videos. In them, I break down and analyze Urahara and Soi Fon's character, similar to how I did Yoruichi's here. So what are your thoughts on the Black Cat Goddess of Thunder, the one who held so many titles and positions and had left them all behind for the sake of her friends? Do you like Yoruichi Shihoin's character as much as I do? I would love to hear your thoughts on her character, and if there is anything that I failed to mention about her, then definitely let me know in the comments. And lastly, if you like these videos and you want to see more of them, then subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell notifications. And I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, then please consider supporting my channel on Patreon. I have multiple tiers with rewards including access to an exclusive Discord server, video scripts, as well as being the first to know about unreleased upcoming videos. Thank you for your time, and whatever you choose to contribute I will appreciate, and it will mean a lot to me.